Welcome to Lead Like a Girl, where we are empowering everyday women through our stories. I'm your host, Jessica Smith, and I began this journey by sharing my life story. Now, I've joined forces with my longtime friends, Jamie and Coralyn, to keep this party going. We met many years ago as young sales girls in our 20s, driven and quickly rising to the top of our industry. As the years went on, life happened, and we all found ourselves in new companies and completely different industries, still striving for success in it all. Career, family, faith, fun. Now, it wasn't easy, but we never stopped moving. Get ready for our real conversations, inspiring stories, and our big life lessons as we share it all. The good, the bad, and the funny. Welcome to Lead Like a Girl.
Okay. Hello. Welcome to Lead Like a Girl. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello. I feel like we haven't done this for a long time. I don't know why.
Because we haven't done this for a long time.
Weeks.
Yeah. So Coralyn and I are coming back off of vacation. I think the brain is still on vacation. Unlike us, if you've been tuning in every single week, thank you so much for listening to us. Please share any of the messages that you think are important, or if you laugh along with us or like our podcast, we appreciate you sharing. We're on all of the social media platforms. We're on any of the ways that you can listen to podcasts. We're on it. So we appreciate all of it. We appreciate your comments and your questions, and a big shout out and thank you to all of our guests that we've had, because it is so fun to have a guest on here and learn from them and ask them questions. So I've loved, I don't know, do you guys agree? I've loved every single one of our guests so far.
It's so
Absolutely.
fun.
We need to have a party and invite them all.
I know.
Oh,
yeah. I know. I love it.
a Lead Like a Girl Summit times 2.0.
Yes. Okay, so how are you guys? Coralyn, I got to spend several days with Coralyn in Costa Rica recently, and it was freaking fabulous.
It was so fun.
We missed you so much, Jessica.
Yeah, I missed
We brought like like Flat Stanley. We brought like a flat Jessica around on all of our.
Really? Do you have a picture?
Maybe it was just you in spirit.
Yeah. Your name was brought up very frequently on our trip. We missed you a lot.
We're just missing one.
Thank you. We'll have to do a redo.
Yeah, for sure. You guys, the topic for today is pretty timely. We've been sprinkling this topic, I think, over the last couple of months a little bit. We've been talking a little bit about this, and it has to do with caring for our parents. So your parents care for you when you're a kid, and they teach you things, and they love you, and they take care of you, and they guide you. And then you get to a point when the roles reverse, right? So then you have to start caring for them, and you have to maybe teach them some things, and then you have to help them and guide them with a few things. And so we're going to dive into that a little bit today. And I have a question for you. And to anybody listening, I have not prepped them with this question, but I would love to start this off with, if you can tell me a story. If you could tell me maybe your favorite, I love this one, your favorite recipe or your favorite tradition that you love to preserve, like something that you'd love to keep in your mind, in your heart, that you learned from your parents, and or a lesson that you learned from your parent that you would love to always remember that you could teach your children. So either one of you can start with this, but I just want to hear that story. Give me a favorite tradition or a story or a recipe or a lesson. What's something you want to always keep that you learned from one of your parents?
So when I was married, one of the gifts that I got from my mom was a cookbook, but it was all of her recipes. My favorite recipes that she made for us as a kid, she wrote down in her handwriting on a note card and put them in a book. So I have her recipe on how to make the frosting we made as a kid and apple crisp. And one of my favorites that's in there is grandma's goulash. So it isn't her recipe. It's my grandma's.
I think you need to tell people what goulash is. Can you just tell
for all those who are not? Jessica, do you know what goulash is?
Do you know what it is?
Have you
I
heard
do.
that?
I think most
She
people
grew
know
up.
what it is.
She grew up in
It's just like it sounds.
goulash. It's some people call it hamburger casserole or something. I've heard that before. So I know some people calls it funeral casserole because that's what they always eat at funerals. But my grandma's is very simple. Like you probably don't even need a note card because it's only 5 things. It's hamburger, but it's very specific. It's cremettes, elbow noodles, contadina tomato sauce, celery and onions, and then salt and pepper, and you can throw in a little Tabasco if you want to, but that's it. And this recipe I've made, we've had people come down to our house. Like we had a friend of mine who's in a band, and his whole band stayed at our house one time, and I made them grandma's goulash. And I kid you not, these dudes, this is a serving that would last for like 20 people, and they ate the whole pot. So, but I think, one of those really sweet memories that I have in terms of food and passing down traditions is this cookbook that I have from my mom. Her handwriting, our family traditions, and our family recipes. It's really, really sweet.
I love that.
I love that. As you know, I have different type of parents than you guys. So I have a bunch of lessons of what not to do. I won't just my mom like that. I love my mom. So one of the things I'll just say growing up is my mom was always cooking and cleaning. So I think that is, I don't know that that's a tradition, but that's just something that I take from my mom, like having a clean and organized, smelling good house. It was just something that I took from her, and hope that even though I have boys, that they take that on as far as just a household tradition. For me also, my grandfather used to, and my mom is still with us, but my grandparents are not, and my grandfather used to make homemade flour tortillas, and the smell of those things are just absolutely wonderful. He also was a man of God after many, many years of battling alcoholism, and that was before I was born. So I always knew my grandfather as a barber. He owned a barber shop. He carried a Bible, and if you sat in his chair, you were going to get ministered to one way or the other. So that is not necessarily a preacher, but that's something that I hold near and dear to my heart from my grandfather. So those are kind of those things. And then a whole bunch of stuff, like I said, of what not to do. I have those, and I think those are important.
I think that's true for everybody, though. I mean, I love hearing like the stories that my mom would tell me about all the crazy stuff that she did when she was young. I always joke that my daughters, I mean, I would leave on a work trip and I'd be out of town, and I remember one time my daughter was home alone, and I think she was maybe like 15 or 16, and I came home and she was sitting on the sofa knitting, like with the dog on her lap, and I was thinking to myself, if I was 15 or 16 and I was home alone, there'd be a party. I mean,
big party.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy. And then my mom was like almost a step above that, where she'd talk about like, you know, the alcohol bottle in the freezer would have like bust open because it was full of water, because that's what she I mean, it's just, I think we all have those stories. My mom was so good at this. Like, always, she knew what you loved to eat. She knew your favorite meals. She knew what you loved for snacks. And her house was so comfortable. So it's like she always had like the comfiest rugs, and she always had like the fluffiest like towels, and the guest bed was the most comfortable bed you've ever slept in. So like for me, and that's what I learned from her. So when you went home, and I love the quote, "Home is where your mom is." It's like when I went home, it's like I had the best sleep, and there was like a book sitting next to the bed, and the rug was cozy, and she made my favorite breakfast. My sister always talks about my mom always made eggs Benedict for her every single time she came home. And she would send I think you have one. I know we've talked about this. My mom would send my friends like a doily and like a jar of jam. Which
I have Jerry's doilies at my house.
Yes, and so I've tried to like adopt that same thing of like sending my friends gifts, or like trying, you know, when my daughters came home from college, I would make sure and put their like slippers and like a cozy pair of pajamas out or whatever. So I learned that from her. It's just, make people feel special, like learn what they like, buy their favorite candy, make sure their favorite dinner is out. My stepdad kind of did the same thing. He knew I loved a certain dinner, so he would always make sure he made that dinner when I was home. So
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to say, even though this isn't about moms, this is about parents, but notice that we all went to our moms. So, but they're great dads out there too.
Oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I know. I still talk about my stepdad probably more than my mom. It's usually around food. I don't know. But yeah, we wanted to talk about this a little bit. It's a little bit personal for me because, as you guys know, and probably some people who listen to our podcast, my mom passed away a few months ago. And I personally had a situation where over the last year, I became the caregiver in a sense, not just me, but many members of my family.
But a lot of you.
A lot of us. Yes. Yeah. A lot of people do, it's just what happens sometimes. And when a loved one goes through hard times, illness, whatever the case is, you do have to step up and you do have to change your schedule and do things that aren't your normal thing, where maybe your mom did make you those special meals, or maybe your mom did take care of you, or she did give you advice, or not necessarily your mom, but her parent or a loved one. And then now you have to be that person. You have to drive them to the appointments, and you have to make sure that their house is clean, and you have to provide the meals. And so I thought that this was a good topic to just bring up because at the ages that we all are, I mean, I'm 49 right now. And so I know I'm the oldest of the group, but I think at the age that we are, this is a timely thing that we should talk about, because our parents are getting to the ages where it's probably pretty likely that we do have to take care of them. So I have a couple questions for you guys. The first one, how would you approach a conversation about aging or health or caring options with your parents if they get to the stage of, let's say, an illness or let's say an injury? How would you bring up a conversation about that with your parents? Would you jump in and just take over? Would you ask them what their feelings are? What would be the first step that you guys would take if all of a sudden one of your parents breaks a leg, one of your parents finds out they have cancer, whatever it is, you're in a position where you're the caregiver? What would be your first step?
Well, I just want to say that I feel like this is common for a lot of people. And I have, like you said, we're at that age. So I have a few friends that are in the midst of a lot of this. And one that I just spoke with about a situation, and she is like, her mental health is at jeopardy right now. She is not in a good place. So it makes me think about, why do we wait until the diagnosis? Why do we wait until the fall, whatever it is? Because it seems like that's really where the stress settles in, because you're scrambling to figure out your plan. And then it's usually just on one person. I notice that there's always this feuding and communication issues, and one lowlife that's a lazy ass and doesn't want to do anything. And it's like, it's the same story, just different characters every time.
Right.
So it made me think about, it feels like there needs to be a proactive approach. And that is, we know that our parents are up in age. How do you got to bring the topic up? You got to feel comfortable with actually creating a plan and saying, hey, get your siblings together, even the low life, everybody together. And it's like, let's talk about this. And maybe if you do have, like in my case, I might have the best relationship with my mom. So have those conversations, ask her the questions, kind of get a little feedback, and then go to the siblings and say, hey, let's have a conversation about, how are we going to handle this? What are we thinking? So that was my thought, is let's start by being proactive and opening those conversations and not being afraid to have them because it makes us sad or uncomfortable or whatever. So that's my first thought.
I agree completely. I feel like sometimes it happens when like one parent dies. So one parent passes away, and now all of a sudden the other parent goes, oh, shoot, they didn't have life insurance, or they didn't have this figured out. So now I have to figure all this stuff out, or now I should whatever, create a will or whatever. But it's like you're waiting until this thing happens. That's the catalyst to figure out who gets what or whatever, creating a plan.
Yeah. I also think to consider, if you're the person that's trying to get the family together to have this conversation, I would say that's a telltale sign that you're probably a planner, the leader, the one that usually takes charge. And I would say that be prepared, because you're going to get mixed reviews. We've tried to have a little bit of this conversation proactively, and my siblings have said a different of opinion on whether how much they want to or not want to be involved in the care of our parents, and that's okay, because we're not all born as caretakers, but we all have a responsibility, right? And that my responsibility might look different than my brother's responsibility, for example, and work that out a little bit in terms of personality, but also be okay with, I'm not prepared to do this. And if it's a financial or just like, I just don't know how to do it, you might have to walk them through different stages. And I think that that's the challenge too, is that I haven't read a handbook on this. There's not, and there probably are handbooks on this now, but I mean, like, preparing for this and how to have the relationship with your parents and this kind of role reversal is new territory for everybody, and just giving everybody some grace in this whole line.
So one of the things that I read this article that basically had to do with the subject matter of work, dealing with your aging parents and the relationship and how that differs. It said, your parents aren't perfect. Neither are you. You don't have all the answers, but your parents, they didn't either. You realize that just like you, your parents are still growing, which I love, because we all are. Your parents, they do become your friends in a way. Your relationship just evolves in that way, and I love that. With that, you have to work on your relationship. I remember one time I was telling my daughters, I was just remarking one time how some people aren't close to their family. Some people aren't close to their parents or their sisters or their siblings or their cousins, and how lucky we were that we were close to our family, because sometimes that doesn't happen. And that's, we're fortunate that we're close to them. While you still may ask for their advice, they might ask for yours now. You can be more honest with your feelings with your parents as you get older, and they really did and still do want the best for you. I feel pretty lucky, because at the end of the last handful of years, I was able to have a really great relationship with my mom. I was able to just I lived out of Iowa for like 20 years, so I was not physically, in the proximity of my parents. And so when I moved back, I was able to have a closer relationship and talk more with her and my stepdad and my dad, and develop more of a friendship, right, with them. And it got me thinking a little bit about just your kind of that subject of like your friendship with your parents. So the next question I had in my arsenal for you guys was, have you ever had a situation where you either disagreed with your parents and had to sort of have I don't want to call it a fight, but let's say, what's it called?
Jessica will call it a fight.
Okay. Have you ever had...
Let's not beat around the bush here.
Okay. Let's say, I'm going to say like differing political views, different health views, different whatever, parenting views. Have you ever had a situation where you had to deal with just a completely different difference of opinion with your parents? And how did you get through that?
Listen, my mom is literally calling me right now to cuss me out.
How timely.
Right.
I called Marie and told her to give you a call.
Right. Yeah, it's, again, I feel like my family's just a little different. It's weird because even though me and my mom are the closest, we're like oil and water. Like, we fight all the time. And I'm sure as an adult, probably in the last 10 years, my mom probably grabbed me and choked me, literally. It's, like we have disagreements all the time. When you were saying that, it kind of made me think about, I think there's kind of stages of this relationship. We talked a little bit about just getting to that point where you start feeling comfortable about planning. And I'd love to have an expert on the show as a guest, speaking of guests, to like talk through that stuff, like wills and trust and, life insurance, like all of that stuff to prepare, because that's not something that we always did. Even though I've had a life insurance policy on my mom since I was probably like 19. I thought she was going to be dead like 30 years ago. And here she is still living. And, I'm still paying this life insurance because, and that's a good thing, don't get me wrong, but because I've watched so many people without it and having to scram to get money together to bury people. So I've seen a lot of that stuff. But I want to talk about real quick, like this place with your parents where it's like, almost like teaching them the stuff that they didn't teach you because they didn't know the information. I get joy out of that. It's like a lot of stuff that I see it. It's like, man, I didn't get this from my parents because they didn't have it to give me this information. But now that I have it, I want to share it with them. So I find myself doing a lot of that with my mom and my mother-in-law, whether it be about finances or, credit or just different stuff. And it's really like, I don't want to say teaching a kid, but it is kind of like teaching your kids, because it's stuff that even though they're adults, depending on your background, and in our family, in our culture, they didn't have that information and they never learned these things. And it may be basic life skills that they didn't teach us and they didn't have. And we find ourselves doing a lot of that with our adult parents. So I don't know if you guys experience that, but that's like a whole thing too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can remember a few times that my mom has sat me down, because she comes down to our house a decent amount to, if I'm out of town or something, she comes and hangs out with my son. She kind of is, she's me when I'm gone, which I love, and it's awesome. And I think that when on the front and back end of those trips, she has a chance to see myself and my husband and our son like interact as a family. And she's commented a few times on, if I would have had the skills to communicate in the way that you do with your husband and the patience that you have for him, my marriage might have looked a little different. And it's not anything that I've necessarily even told, hey, mom, if you'd have done this, like that would have been better. Just stuff that she's observed, or even just different things, the way that I choose to parent my son and the things that he does or doesn't do, like his allowance and his responsibilities around the house were a little different, and significantly probably more than we had when we were growing up, So some of those things, I feel like she sits back and like, oh, like, I like the way that you do that. And I feel like that is one of the best compliments that I've ever gotten. Your mom telling you did a good job, or even maybe potentially better than she did. Like, I can't wait to tell that to my son too, right? Like, hey, this is where you totally screwed me up, mom. This is where we're doing it better. And like, that is a compliment. Maybe it won't be in the moment, but I'll come around.
Yeah. It's just like each generation gets a little bit better, a little bit better.
I mean, that's really the goal though, right? Isn't it? Like, you just want to just be a little better than we had it growing up. That if you can look back at your life and say that that's the case, and it's a win.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. For the last year, really, was caring for my mom. And a takeaway for me with this subject, and I'm so glad that I did this, was I pampered my mom. She was ill. Like, she was in the hospital for several months. And, I'm so glad that I did. I always joked that my mom was kind of a princess, but we would go and wash her hair and rub her feet and bring her pictures and bring her soft blankets and bring her things. And when she came home, we didn't push her to do things. And at one point I had some family members saying, no, you got to push her. She's got to walk by herself. She's got to, and I never really made her do that. I was like, I'll bring it to you. I'll bring you some snacks. I'll bring you the soup or whatever. And I babied her, and I did, But like now I'm like, I'm so glad I did that, just because at the end of the day, what happened. And but I think, I just thinking about what I've learned from all three of my parents, because I have my stepdad was very important to me, my father, my mom. I just think, it's just such a reminder that time is so, spending quality time with them is so important. And, when you're caring for a parent is getting up in age, you just never know. You really don't. And that's true with everybody, but being respectful and recognizing the fact that as an adult or an aging parent, helping them maintain their dignity and their independence plays a huge role in caring for them. You know, when you're, and I think that's true with anybody who's maybe ill, but I think with our parents, really, you know, helping them look presentable and like, you know, still retain their dignity and help them, you know, still feel independent, even if they might not be as they just a great way to show them that you love them, show them that you respect them. And yeah, that just a takeaway for me is that, like, spend that time, you know.
You know what's funny is actually, so we just came out of Easter. My family was down at our house, and my brother was just reminiscing about my grandma, so my mom's mom. And my mom had walked through this with my grandma. So my grandma had gotten sick. At the time, my mom had moved in with my grandma to help take care of her, and it was a challenge. You know, you listen to my mom talk about it because your mom has always been super strong, like always took, I mean, my grandma had 6 kids and 4 of them are boys, you know, so she was just always this like pillar of like strength, like always could take care of herself or whatnot. But then when my grandma started declining, she really wanted to be babied. And my mom was not having it. Like it was kind of funny because my grandma would ask, "Can you help me?" My mom was like, "No, you need to do this yourself." And I think mentally it's a little bit like, if I keep doing these for you, then you're not going to have the movement. So I think that it was totally from a good place from my mom, like a good intention. But to listen to my brother, who was living at the house with my mom at the time, taking care of my grandma, it was hilarious. He had told the story one time when they were getting ready. So my grandma went to kind of adult daycare during the day, a few days a week, and they had a morning. Like, my grandma needed help with everything. My mom's running late. She's trying to get her makeup on. My grandma needs her socks on. I mean, it was just a crazy storm. And I can't remember what the last straw was. My mom, she's getting her out to the car, and she's like, "Can you help me? Do whatever." And my mom was like, "Oh my gosh, mom." Like, she gets her in the car, get in the car, mom. And she like, and they drive off to the daycare. And my brother told me it was the most awkward drive in the world, because usually my grandma's like looking out the window and like, "Oh, remember, that's where I went to school, and this is where I did this," and this, would give like kind of a tour of the neighborhood. It was complete silence, like the whole entire trip.
She got yelled at. She got scolded.
Sometimes you can't prepare for what you don't know. And I would imagine that I will be the same way, because my mom is my grandma too, right? If I have to move into that space and take care of my mom in that fashion, like, "No, mom, like, you've always done this. You can do this." And I'm going to have to learn, well, maybe you can't. And maybe I do need to take a step from you, Jamie, and learn like, hey, it's okay to have some soft skills around those types of things. Cause I feel like it's all necessary, right? And you have to, I mean, it's just in that sales trading, you need to push when you need to push and step back, but it's going to be a whole learning experience for everybody.
Yeah. And I think another thing too that I was thinking about, I was saying I have a friend, and I remember her, and this is why my heart just like aches for her, because I remember her as a kid and she did everything. Like, she has one brother, and I just remember her like 7th grade. She was doing everyone's laundry. She was walking to the laundromat with a big old, like 6 blocks away. Like, she has done everything. Her mom worked, and then early, like, she's been doing this since in her 50s. Her mom lives still by herself, but she has to pick her mom up. She has to take her to her doctor's appointments. She has to buy her groceries. She has to make sure her laundry's done. Like, she has to manage her, and she's been doing this for years, and she still has a job, and she never had kids. And I'm like, I think God just knew that your kid was your mom, and there was just no way that you could do both of these things. And now she's at a place too where it's hard, because then you have your husband that's looking at you like, "Well, what about me? Like, you're always taking care of your mom. What about me?" And now his mom is getting to the age, and guess who she's calling? Not her son. She's calling my friend. And it's like, I get it. The walls are just kind of like, and so I've been, and I told her, I said, "That's so funny." I talked to her over the weekend, and I'm like, "We're doing an episode on the podcast about this." And I'm like, and so this is timely because she's been doing this. This is not a couple years thing. She's been doing this for years. And now her mom was just, diagnosed with another major health problem. And, she has cancer. And so now she's going through these treatments. It's a whole nother thing. And it's just, like I said, my heart aches for her because it's a lot on one person. How do you manage that? And I told her, you have to take time to just stop and take care of yourself. And I know that's hard, but that's the first thing I would say, is that we have to take time and stop and take care of ourselves and just forget everybody else. And some of us that just have a heart that loves to care for people and know that there's a need, it's hard for us to do that. But I told her, I'm like, you're going to run yourself into health issues trying to take care of everybody else. So that's my big thing, is we got to just stop and take care of ourselves. We've been talking a lot about discipline and time management and all those things. And all those things matter in these moments, because those are the things that's going to help you not drive yourself crazy. Because that's what she told me. She's like, I feel like I'm literally going crazy. I'm losing my whole damn mind here. And it's a real thing.
Well, it's good reason too, when you have those many balls in the air. I mean, how do you not? And we're not just talking about tasks, we're talking about humans, like actual people and their care. And it's just balls that you can't drop amongst all the other things that you feel like you can't drop either. So it's stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just think those are two big takeaways here. The one is the proactive approach. Have the conversations, get a plan together. Even if, I think once your parents are, somewhere around those 60s, and hey, I had a great grandmother lived to be 103. She took care of herself for years, and that's great. But have your plan together. Understand what that looks like, who's doing what. Like you said, Cor, like everybody's going to play a different role, but get that plan together and make sure that they're okay with the plan. The parent has to be okay with the plan, right? And what that looks like, and prepare yourself so that when you don't have to wait until something happens before you actually get a plan together. Because after that fall at a certain age, if you put your parents, they're home alone, they're older, they fall, that could be their death sentence right there, one fall.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I just, this topic means a lot to me. You guys know that. And I think that there's a lot more that we could say. And I think you're right, Jessica. The mental health of the person caring for the parents or whomever is vital. It's very important to keep that in mind as well. And I think it's planning for it before it happens is vital as well, and if the takeaway for anybody listening is to just make a plan, then that's great. That's at least one step in the right direction. We are at time, so I just want to remind everybody that if you would like to watch us, you can watch us on YouTube, Lead Like a Girl. You can jump on our website, leadlikeagirllab.com. You can purchase merchandise, which is great and very easy. And also listen on our social media. Look at us on Facebook, share, comment. If you have any suggestions on how you've cared for an aging parent or want to suggest any other topics for our podcast, it is very much appreciated. So thank you, guys.